Welcome back. I am John P. Today I am answering your questions. Here's the deal. On my Instagram, The Real John P., I will periodically post a Q&A form where you can ask me your questions, whether it's watch related or even about delraywatch.com, where we buy, sell, and trade watches. By the way, we just got in a ton of cool new watches, including a very rare limited production to just nearly over a dozen pieces of a UN or Ulysse Nardin, very special, fully sapphire tourbillon, where the main plate of the mechanics and the movement is actually produced from a sapphire or from sapphire as well. So check that out at delraywatch.com. But you can ask me these questions periodically on my Instagram, and I do answer them. And we're gonna start out, oh, by the way, today on the wrist, Omega, Seamaster, Aquaterra, Good Planet, 38.5 full titanium on bracelet. Just actually, we took this in on a trade, but I think I'm probably going to be keeping this in my collection. Maybe we will we'll decide here in the coming days. But the first question that you have asked and I'm going to answer is, what is the best non-Rolex, non-looking bracelet watch between $1,000 and $2,000 US dollars? So I'm assuming here the question is really, the watch that it's on a bracelet, doesn't look like a Rolex, between $1,000 and $2,000. Now I'm actually going to push the range down a little bit and go as far as to say a Seiko Diver. Now you're gonna ask, hey, why do you say that? Haven't you said some things about Seiko in the past? I've actually been wearing my Seiko Rowing Blazers collection watches quite a whole lot recently, and I've been very impressed with just the durability and how rugged they are, and also how much they've grown on me. I think, for a few $100s, you can get a watch that might even get you to what you'd be getting at that $1,000 to $2,000, considering that a lot of Swiss brands have really pushed the envelope and raised their prices in recent times. So I would say even try to go for a Seiko. That would probably be a really great option just south of that range, but also Hamilton, Tissot, and the like make really great options in that range as well. Now, next is, what is the best bang for buck under $1,000? Now, I kind of just answered that question, but I would say Seiko as well. Now, if you branch away from a large company, right, large production volume like Seiko, you can get into micro brands, and there are a lot of very interesting micro brands out there. Perhaps look at some of the videos that I've done where I talk about lists of micro brands, and also, check your favorite blogs about different reviews on micro brands. But micro brands have very low overhead, so they do offer great value a lot of the time. Otherwise, Seiko does it, Hamilton does it, Tissot does it. Now, next, what is the favorite watch in my collection? Probably my Rolex 1016 Explorer frogfoot dial from 1972. I don't wear it as much as I'd like to, and that's namely because in South Florida, I'm always outside, I'm always doing something active when I can. So I'm typically wearing my Rolex Oyster Perpetual that, I don't have to worry about it having kind of some of the nuances that vintage watches do in terms of, the tritium falling, the lume falling, or anything being done to the dial, because it's made with modern spec. So that's probably my favorite, but it's difficult when you're a watch dealer, right? There's so many cool watches you get to love and experience. Now, next, the question is thoughts on Chopard Mia Miglia. Now, I like the watches, and the original watch from this line I really loved. It was actually so popular when it came out. You would see them on men, you'd see them on women, you'd see them on everyone. It was such a cool watch when it came out, but the brand came out with so many iterations and versions of it, and it doesn't really stand for a whole lot anymore than besides something that is remotely racing inspired for the Chopard house, really. So in terms of my thoughts particularly, it really just depends on what watch du jour they stamp that particular, collection of models on. I like the original, I like some of the newer ones, but too many to really, have an opinion on all of them. Now, next is, what is the most underrated vintage watch brand or brands, probably Enicar. I have a couple of vintage Enicars that I love that they're drawing up on the market. They're going up in price, but also the quality is really there. This is a brand that was made by the Racine family, but they did go defunct. They were not around for that long. There's a reshoot today, but it's totally different. I wouldn't even look at it. But the original Enicar is so cool, in my opinion, still undervalued. A lot of the same quality you'd get from some of the big guys, but they're just not that popular because they lack current day modern branding. So Enicar, I would take a look at. Now, also Vulcain, I also think is very undervalued, and I made a post recently on my Instagram, The Real John P, where you can check out a recent addition to my collection, a very cool Vulcain cricket watch. Now, next question is, are you planning to visit Europe this summer? Maybe. I do have some family that's going to be going over there for, for some business-related things, so I may actually tag along for part of the leg and experience some of the different cities over there this summer. But honestly, at Del Rey Watch, we're so busy. I'm kind of one of those people that always likes to be going and working on things, so I might have to literally get pulled out of the office or from away from the computer to actually get out and take a vacation for once, but we'll see. That sounds like a lot of fun. If you have any recommendations in Europe or places you think I should come or join you, please leave that in the comments below. Next, will Omega overtake Rolex in years to come due to over availability? I think probably what that means is that there's not as many Rolex's watches available at retail compared to Omega. Well, the thing is, Omega wants their watches to be available because they want to sell more watches, and Omega has had more production capabilities because they have the entire Swatch behind them, right? They have the Swatch production capabilities in the group behind them. They're publicly traded, so they do have, technically probably more resources if we want to think about it in that regard. But also, they have a different classification as to, do they intend to generate profit compared to Rolex, and what are they actually trying to do? And what Omega has been trying to do is they've been trying to get branding on par and be as recognizable with Rolex. So will they overtake in terms of orders? I think we'd actually have to see how many watches per year Omega publishes. I haven't seen hard facts. Swatch Group gives out some information, but there are some limits to that. I think especially in terms of with the investor filings, it's mostly financial related and not the number of pieces. But I do see Omega becoming more popular, especially with collectors. And I do think they're doing a good job, right? I'm wearing one right now and not the OP. So what does that have to say for you? So yeah, I think they're really coming a long way. I can't say for sure if they're going to be, the next Rolex or at least, surpass them in terms of the product recognition. Probably not, unless something crazy happens, but you never know. We're living in 2022. Now, next, what are your thoughts on Romain Gaultier? Now, high-end independent watches are interesting, right? In my opinion, these types of manufacturers are just different than when we talk about like a Rolex or even a Patek Philippe, right? When we talk about these high-end independent manufacturers like this one, like Kari Voutilainen, like, even FP Journe, if we want to get into it, even though they're kind of getting a little bit more mainstream and probably going to up their production volume just because of the way that it's, really taken a foothold in watch collecting. These high-end independent manufacturers, they're more art in a certain point, and it has unique aspects to it, but it's much more different than a lot of watch collecting can be. And these are watches that don't trade a lot, they're not produced a lot, and they are attractive to very certain particular buyers that don't happen to be the same person. On average, from what I see, anecdotally, than the, kind of the watch collector that buys Omega, buys Rolex, buys even Breguet or any of the other companies that produce many watches. So it's a bit of a different buyer, more of an art buyer. I can appreciate a lot of these watches, especially for the mechanics behind them. A lot of high-end independent manufacturers, in my opinion, don't necessarily scratch the aesthetic or the design itch, but I think when you look at the high-end independent manufacturers, they're always trying to put a unique and very special spin on it to attract those people that want something very unique and special. And for me, I'm just gravitating towards things that I like and enjoy, and it doesn't have to be something that nobody else can have, nobody else can get. You have to wait 15 years on a list. That doesn't really matter to me. What really matters to me is, do I like the design? So yeah, particularly this brand, they do some interesting things, but I'm not like overwhelmingly drawn to it, even though the quality is there, even though in terms of mechanics, sophistication is there. Now, next question is, hey, from Germany, great content, thank you so much. What do you think is the best value out there? Now, that could be anything, but truly where I think there's a lot of great value currently is transitional watches. So let's talk watches from like the 1990s to the early 2000s. People are catching on, but I don't think it's to where it will be in the future, as there are more watch collectors and more people start getting into these watches from this transitional period where it was, turning from a watch was turning from being really a tool or something that you would just use to tell time and becoming more of a hobby. And in this transitional period, I think, there are a lot of very cool watches that were overlooked at the time, and now maybe not the case, right? Think the Omega Speedmaster Schumacher series, right? The colorful dials. Think these types of watches, the transitional periods, think late 5513s or 16800s or even 168,000s from Rolex. This transitional 1990 to 2005 maybe, some very interesting watches out there. And I think once they turn vintage and then kind of get on the radar of the vintage collectors, the prices will probably go up on some of these. So maybe I'll do a video about that in the future, because I think I could really talk about some transitional period watches that are to keep on your radar. Now, last question is, how did you meet Hans? Now, Hans is one of our watchmakers at delraywatch.com, where we also have a service that we offer, a service center where we do repair your watches, and we have a pretty quick turnaround time compared to most of the brands, though there is a pretty high demand for watchmakers, so that's not always the case, but generally that is the case. And we met Hans in the trade, right? He happened to know Federico. They had, worked together on some things previously in the past with some companies through some consulting. And so we had known Hans from that way. And the thing is, we were so lucky with Hans, because, Hans was late stage career. He was living very close to us in South Florida. And also, Hans is incredibly skilled, right? He was the technical director of Vacheron. He, worked and helped on designing some of the movements for brands such as Breitling, and he's done so many other things. And even today, he's just so busy doing other things besides Del Rey Watch. He does consulting for a lot of big brands. He goes around, he gives different types of seminars and speeches and training. And he works for a lot of really big corporations in some cases on a consulting basis. So, because he has transitioned into kind of more of a industry leadership role in a way, we also do have other watchmakers that we utilize that, Hans has either recommended or supervised in some capacity. And so, Hans is very integral, and, he's a great friend of ours, and we're very lucky to have him on board. But we couldn't be any luckier to have Hans really with us in this kind of capacity. So if you do have a watch that you need service, either Hans or one of our other watchmakers would love to take care of it at delraywatch.com. Just fill out the form. We'd love to help you out. So guys, what else do we think? Do we have any other questions? Please make sure to check out my Instagram, The Real John P, where I do ask you and I do respond here in these videos, as you can see. And also do not forget to check out delraywatch.com. Thanks guys. You've been chatting with John P.